This is Football at 4.
Football at 4 is powered by the Inside the Birds podcast, and of course, it is brought to you by Bet365. Whatever the sport, whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Andrew DiCecco is in his happy place, the NFL Combine of Indianapolis, where a lot going on. The NFL Draft is closing in on us. Free agency will be here. We've got a lot to discuss as we take a look at some of the potential draft candidates for the Eagles, who, by the way, have pick number 22, but they also have a plethora of other picks here as we, get you ready for the draft in just a little bit. The Eagles will draft 22, 50, 53, 97, and then they will draft in the 5th round 3 times and 1 in the 6th. So they do have 4 picks in the top 100 of this draft. Andrew DiCecco is here. We'll talk a little bit about his first impressions. 4 picks in the top 100, Andrew DiCecco. Do you like this draft and having that much? Obviously, you like to have that many picks, but do you like this draft class in the top 100?
Yeah, hey, Mike, good to be with you. And to answer your question, yeah, I do really like it depends on what position, but it's incredibly deep along the offensive line, corner. There's some really good receivers if they choose to get one. I guess day 2 would be. But, yeah, I mean, you have to like where the Eagles are sitting. And with a team with so many needs, I think they're going to be in position to address most of them.
Yeah, you take a look at some of the needs they have, and we know they have a lot of them there. At number 22 for you, Andrew, what are some of the, obviously corner, I don't know, I guess offensive line, edge rusher always seem to be in play there. Is that where you would kind of be focusing on in this draft, knowing what they need?
Yeah, so at 22 right now, and it's still really early, so I like to kind of reinforce that to a lot of listeners, but Kool-Aid McKinstry is a player who I think could be available. Quinion Mitchell had a really good Senior Bowl, and I think he's going to test really well this week. So by my estimation, he's going to soar up draft boards and maybe out of reach for 22. But as I look at it right now, Tyler Guyton, the offensive tackle from Oklahoma, would be a player to keep an eye on, just knowing that Lane Johnson's going to be 34 years old. The Eagles traditionally are a team that looks ahead and tries to address the position. They like fortifying the trenches, so that might be an area to look at. Darius Robinson, the edge rusher from Missouri, has inside and outside versatility. He's really strong, powerful, can anchor. He's someone to keep an eye on as well. And that would be at the Senior Bowl, not yet at the Combine. It's still early. So those are 2 guys I like there, and Kool-Aid McKinstry as well.
Yeah, and obviously there's so many things that happen before then and now. You're out there for Inside the Birds and obviously looking at some of these draft prospects. But what are some of the things, Andrew, you are focusing on this week while you're in Indianapolis?
Well, I mean, I'm going to be out here for just another day or so, and I'm not going to be here for the testing part of it. But for me, I like to talk to different prospects and get a sense for where they're at, what are some of the challenges they've encountered, how did they go about working through those issues, what do they learn about themselves, and really getting to know them and see what makes them tick. And also, this is a week where, first and foremost, gathering information is paramount in the work, in the business that I'm in. I'm also out here with Adam and Jeff, so all 3 of us are out here. ITB is well represented, and for me, it's all about gathering as much information as possible in the time that I have.
Yeah, and obviously there's a lot of spots out there as we'll obviously get a little closer to that draft, but feeling like the whole draft season starting to get here. This is kind of the kickoff of it all with the Combine, and you take a look at where this team, we heard yesterday from Howie Roseman. I want to kind of take a look at a couple things he said. He mentioned James Bradberry was a part of this team, a part of the future of this team, maybe not long-term future, but everybody just assumes that James Bradberry is not going to be here. But what I want to get from you is, all right, do we think that Bradberry didn't perform to his standards because of the scheme, the way he was used, or more likely because he has lost a step?
Yeah, I'm not going to speculate on whether it was the scheme and try and guess or anything like that, or even guess if there was an injury that he was dealing with. This, to me, looks like a player who he had speed concerns, and last season there were opportunities. The Super Bowl season, there was opportunities for teams to stretch him vertically. This never got a chance to because the pass rush was always getting home. So I think this was more so it was a combination of him diminishing skills and not being able to cover in short area and losing at the line of scrimmage, which was very apparent on several occasions this season. And teams just looking to take advantage of what was on film the year before that they weren't able to capitalize on. So it's just a player who is sort of drastically fell off a cliff, and they weren't really able to mask that. They also didn't have anybody better really to put in his spot. Now, that's not to say that Bradberry is going to be a slot corner. In fact, they said that they view him as an outside corner. So a lot of fans get concerned. Does that mean that he's going to be starting after everything we just saw? Well, no, that's not the case. He could be a part-time player, situational guy. I'd mentioned on your show before that he could be a specialty type player where you have him cover tight ends and maybe bring him in the red zone where his longer, big-bodied frame can really affect that area of the field. So there's ways that you can use him. And as of right now, he's under contract, as Howie Roseman alluded to. So he's in their plans.
If they are looking for upgrades at the cornerback position, and maybe they go in free agency and say, hey, we do need to replace James Bradberry and turn him into more of a part-time player. Is this a free agent class that you like?
No, I mean, not particularly. I mean, on the high end, obviously the Jarius needs a player who is going to be highly coveted, but his body type and his skill set isn't necessarily going to blend or gel with every single scheme. So Jalen Johnson's another player, but just listening to Matt Eberflus speak yesterday, I got the sense that they're going to do everything that they can to keep him in-house. Those are the two guys at the top there, but I don't know that free agency would be the route to go for the Eagles. They've too often been reliant on getting outside help to fix that position. They need to start drafting properly and really start developing the talent that they have. And I think that starts with the draft. They're in premium spots to really upgrade that, and they need to start developing and honing those prospects. And they have a couple right now, but you need to get some blue chip guys and really start to get this thing moving in the right direction, because they don't have a ton of building blocks, and they have a lot of work to do on that back seven.
Well, and Andrew, that's something that Roseman did admit yesterday. Like, I need to do a better job of finding us talent, and I think he was specifically talking about that cornerback position, and it sounded like he acknowledged that they have failed in finding guys in that spot. So I don't know if it's a fair question, but do you trust Roseman at 22 to select a corner?
Yeah, if that's the best player on their board, then it would go against the grain a little bit, because the Eagles that's not something that they do. But knowing how glaring of a weakness it is, and there could be now, if Quinyon Mitchell's not there will be a little bit of a drop off there. McKinstry is somebody that I think, or even Ennis Rakestraw Jr., the corner from Missouri, could slot right in there. And just knowing how drastic of a need it is, I think that he would have to do that. And it wouldn't really surprise me, just given what you saw on tape last season, and the teams were, blatantly attacking either corner spot. So that's something that needs to get addressed.
Andrew DiCecco, Football at 4, he's at the Combine. What is you see a lot of these mock drafts, obviously, so it's always – I love mock drafts. I'm a big fan of, just getting some names that are in the mix there, who's going to be in kind of your area. I've heard a lot of listeners, people texting in, tweeting. Do they call it tweeting anymore? Xing? I don't know what you call it. But Cooper DeJean from Iowa, what kind of fit – he seems to be a popular player in this draft.
Yeah, I like Cooper quite a bit. Now, the question becomes fit, and I don't know that he's a player that's going to fit in every scheme, and he kind of falls in an odd spot there in the first round. So this is going to be a really big week for him, both from the interview perspective and the testing perspective primarily, to see, because he could end up not even being in the discussion at that point when the Eagles are on the clock at 22, and you all of a sudden have to look at, do we have to potentially trade up for this guy? But I do think that Cooper DeJean has a pretty enticing skill set. Now, it just depends on Vic Fangio. Vic Fangio is going to have a lot of say in the personnel that he brings in, and he may have a certain type of corner that really fits the bill for what he's looking to accomplish. So that's going to be really interesting to see, and very telling based on some of the free agents that they start to bring in. It'll be able to see if that's going to match with some of the prospects that could be available when they're on the clock.
Andrew, yesterday, Nick Sirianni talked about, and one thing I thought was interesting, he said that when I hired Kellen Moore, I think a lot of people just assumed that was maybe a Roseman hire, and that Nick doesn't get a lot of say, but he went out of his way to say, when I hired Kellen, it's because I felt he was the best guy for the job. But when he says wanting to blend the coaching philosophies. What do you think the offense needs more of that Kellen Moore can provide?
Motion, number one, and just some creativity, getting different guys involved and having more of a balance offensively. I thought the Eagles were too infatuated with taking the deep shot and as opposed to taking what's in front of you, and they regressed in many areas. And I think that sometimes they went into this season knowing that, hey, we're the Eagles, we're in the Super Bowl, we went toe-to-toe with Kansas City Chiefs. There's not a whole lot of alterations we need to make offensively. Well, the league caught up to them, and I think you need a creative outside mind that can come in there and bring in fresh ideas, which is a term that they threw around very liberally in the end of the season press conferences. But he's going to bring in a lot more of creativity and get different guys involved, motion. The third receiver is going to be a primary focus, where last season you saw a rotating cast of characters from Julio Jones, Olamide Zaccheaus, Quez Watkins. Now I think you're going to see more of an emphasis placed on that and the level of importance. So you're going to see some new wrinkles for sure.
Yesterday, they also both Sirianni and Roseman, Andrew, were asked about the future of Hassan Ridge, and I think both of them were pretty non-committal. But you're out there. Did you get the sense that it felt like if we get a good offer, we'll take it, or that they really want Ridge back?
Well, I mean, you can read between the lines, and they were very emphatic on how grateful they were for his contributions, how impactful he is to the defense. But they also sort of there was a caveat there, and they said, but we also have to keep in mind the future and how we're going to navigate that as well. So it seems like they're bracing for the potential of not having Hassan Ridge. And I think that when you look at his age and all the different things that come with it, Hassan Ridge is not someone that's going to he's not going to bend this time. I mean, I don't know that his deal was very team friendly to begin with. And you don't want a player who's not happy in that locker room, and you're really trying to restore order there and with a fresh-faced coaching staff. So you want to make sure that you address it and do right by the player. I just don't know if the Eagles are going to be willing to meet him.
Yeah.
Meet his demands. So to me, it seems like he may be elsewhere. But again, if the Eagles have all the leverage there, so
yeah,
I don't know. But I still think there's going to be a team, knowing how much of a premium is placed on pass rushers, that a team that might be close, or maybe even a team like the Texans or the Chiefs or something like that, they may be willing to roll the dice.
I kind of agree with you there, Andrew DiCecco from InsideTheBirds.com, the Inside the Birds podcast. The guys are out at the NFL Combine in Indianapolis. I guess one area at the Combine to keep an eye on would be running back. I would almost bet the house that they're going to have to draft a running back. You only have Kenny Gainwell, a guy that Sirianni did mention yesterday, but Swift a free agent, Boston Scott a free agent. Really the only guy who has any NFL experience is Gainwell. So the running back landscape could really change a lot, and I guess the draft would probably be the spot. Although, Andrew, there are some interesting running backs in the free agent market. So how do you read running back this offseason? Because the way I think Swift, I mean, is he going to get a lot of action? Is he going to get the money he wants? What's the ceiling of money the Eagles would pay to get a veteran running back? I think there's a lot there at running back. Or is it just better to say, you know what, we'll draft a guy?
Well, I don't foresee DeAndre Swift getting the amount of money that, let's say, Miles Sanders got, but I also don't think that he's going to get anything that the Eagles can be willing to pony up for, knowing that that's not a position that they traditionally place a high emphasis on. So, well, with all that being said, I don't envision DeAndre Swift back. If you listen to Nick Sirianni yesterday, you'd be hard-pressed to find any sort of silver lining if you are someone who believes that DeAndre Swift would be a good fit on the Eagles. I don't know that he's in their immediate plans. Now, all that being said, I think that looking at the free agent landscape right now, there are a number of running backs who are cost-effective options to be a sort of a hammer, a power element, which they thought they were getting in Rashad Penny. Maybe look at a Zach Moss, a J.K. Dobbins, a Ty Johnson, perhaps, who sort of bounced around a little bit, former late-round pick of I want to say Detroit Lions. So, I mean, there's some options out there, and I think the way to go is to the draft. There's a guy I really like in Jalen Wright from Tennessee, really explosive, dynamic player who's going to test really well this week and be a name that more folks are talking about and accustomed to. So those are that's kind of how I envision them approaching it: drafting a guy, signing a low-cost free agent, and then filling out the rest of the depth chart with Boston Scott, perhaps, and Kenny Gainwell's still going to be there.
All right. Another area I know that you'll probably be taking a watch at is possible third wide receiver choices in this draft. Do you have that slot guy? Is there someone that can step in and give them some production there, or is free agency a better route to go in this year's draft?
Well, a little bit of both, right? I think that you can draft a day 3 guy and sort of develop him, but when you're a team like the Eagles, you don't want to roll that and has a window open that you need to maximize in terms of Super Bowl. You need to bring in a veteran who can step in and play instead of having someone that's sort of learning on the job and finding their way. And they also may not pan out. So a Noah Brown would make a lot of sense with his previous experience with Kellen Moore. Cedric Wilson would make some sense there as well. James Prochet, a wide receiver from the Ravens, who folks may not be too familiar with. He's someone that I think could be a nice option. He sort of kind of reminds me of, remember when they had Zach Pascal a couple years ago, just more of a physical guy that's willing to do the dirty work, is more than capable as a receiver, can return kicks and also play special teams. And then through the draft, you might look at someone like a Luke McCaffrey or Jamari Thrash or someone like that, probably on day 3. And then have them compete and see what you're able to get.
Andrew DiCecco, of course, the Inside the Birds guys are out there at the Combine. What's the weather like in Indianapolis?
Well, drastic drop in temperature. It dropped about 30 degrees yesterday. Moshe and I were walking around the downtown Indy at night, and it was like 65 degrees. And today it's like a wind tunnel that we're walking through, and 32 degrees where it's blowing us all over the place on the streets. Everybody's, everybody's running for cover here. So it's pretty frigid, and I think tomorrow's going to be just as cold. So I think I will be, instead of walking to my destination spot this evening, I think I will be taking an Uber.
I've never been to Indianapolis, but I always hear about how perfect that city is for this event.
Oh, it's fantastic, Mike. I really encourage you to get out if you ever get a chance. It's just it's such a close – everything's in such close proximity. There's a lot of bars all over and restaurants, and it's just it's a very user-friendly area to have an event of this magnitude.
I'll have to check it out there sometime. All right, Andrew DiCecco and the guys, of course, Football at 4, the Inside the Birds podcast. If you want more on the Combine, make sure you check out InsideTheBirds.com. Andrew, appreciate it, buddy.
Appreciate you. Take care.